It's 35 miles to the river and about the same distance to our spring ahead. Should we go back? Our cattle had already gone without food and water nearly 30 hours. Could they stand to go back? Could they possibly go forward?
In 1848, Jesse Applegate and Peter Lassen opened a trail through northern Nevada, claiming theirs was the easiest route to the gold mines of California. In 1849, some 30,000 gold seekers traveled down the Humboldt River to take 3 different routes across the Sierra Nevada. 1/3 took this trail. Our journey begins in Imlay, Nevada, where we form our caravan and receive last-minute instructions.
Geronimo here.
Oh, the dog! Good. What up there?
Lucky.
Corner! Each group, what channel? Lieutenant. Okay. I'm going to be on 4.
Will be 14.
So this black smooth stuff that we're driving off of, you're not going to see again until 1 o'clock or so on Monday.
A host of notes left here for friends, lines on cards and boards, all open for general inspection. Matter? Why? Taking this or that road? State of health? Condition of cattle and company? To many that are going, this journey will prove a curse. Health or disease, wealth or poverty.
Within just a few miles, we arrive at Callahan Bridge, crossing the Humboldt River. We reduce the air pressure in our tires to prevent getting a flat.
What are you down to? 20? What we're going to do today would have taken about 7 days in a wagon. And they didn't have air conditioning. And in 1846, here's one of my favorite questions, which was the first year that the Applegates, they came on down here, got the people out of Fort Hall, and they came this way, and then they split their trail off right over here. Who was the last people through in 1846? Everybody should know that.
Donner Party?
The Donner Party. That's correct. Ah, you were here last year. You don't get the prize. That's right. The Donner Party were the last people on the trail in 1846, which is why they got caught in the snow. They had, they're another whole story all by themselves. But the first people that went in 1846 on the Applegate Trail got caught in the same snowstorms and ended up, they did end up in Oregon, but they were stuck in the Willamette Valley camped out, and they had a pretty rough winter. But they were close enough to civilization that they didn't have to resort to cannibalism. That water, as ugly as it was a real life saver. Some of the immigrants, when they would camp out along here, would dig a ditch or dig a hole a few feet back from the river, and then in the morning it would be filled with water that was cleaner than what that was.
Stay tonight. We'll watch the full moon rising.
We arrive at Antelope Springs. Most notable here is the broken granite headstone marking the grave of Susan Koo, wife of a wagon master. She died here shortly after childbirth in 1860.
I don't ever wanna be alone with all my...
She gave birth to her 8th child here, Robert Michael, on August 9th of 1860, and then she died 2 days later. The rumor has it, or the story was related to me, in 1930, a 70-year-old man came out here, and he had his father's diaries. And he said that I was born out here, and my mother's buried out here somewhere, and I'd sure like to see her grave because it says that she had a headstone. And the guys, they looked and they read through the diary. They said, well, we know where that is. And they got him on out here, and he got to see his mother's grave before he died. The water.
When we reached the springs, we found about 175 wagons there encamped, waiting their turn to water their stock. The springs were so small that water could only be dipped up with a tin cup into buckets and did not come in half as fast as could be dipped out with one cup. We got our teams between 11 and 12 o'clock at night, and just at 1 started on the road. From Antelope Springs, the road is somewhat uneven for a few miles, and then there is a long hill to ascend. When at the summit, it is descending for several miles, good wheeling the entire distance.
I don't think they're dying so much from getting lost, but the backside of this mountain is Scotia.
Okay.
This mountain here to our left, to the west of us.
And they obviously mined here because they
Yeah,
got all
they-
this
well,
rock
it-
quartz.
This ridge right through here, there was quite a bit of quartz in here.
Here it is on the ground.
Yeah,
I'm sure
well-
they were looking for gold. Did
Yeah.
they find any, do you know?
They did, but they never found it in huge amounts.
Quantity.
There was some big mines. There's 3 or 4 big mines around. There's one on the backside. There's a couple on the backside of this mountain, and there's a couple over to the mountain on the right.
Are they still working?
No. The only mine that's in this area that's capable of being worked is over by Salford. And that mine is a $1 million operation. You know, it's a monster. They moved the mountain. They moved the mountain.
Well, I took them both disconnected so the winch won't work at all. It should, unless you have something else for it.
That hot to the battery's gonna have a charge from off.
One of our lead vehicles develops a mechanical problem. After only a short delay, we are back on the trail. Just one of the many advantages of traveling in a group. The Mormon beetles seem to follow us up to the summit as if expecting to be fed. As we leave the summit, we hear the loud popping sounds of the beetles as we pass over them.
day was excessively warm, yet we hurried on, and descending a couple of miles through the defile, we passed the most beautiful hills of colored earth I ever saw, with shades of pink and white and yellow and green brightly blended. Volcanic mountains were around us, and under ordinary circumstances we could have enjoyed the strange and peculiar scenery.
It just amazes me. Can you imagine being in a covered wagon with steel-rimmed wooden spoke wheel, beating the liver and your kidneys to death? Oh.
You know, to them,
they were strong people. Oh, I gotta say, doggone strong people.
After traveling about 15 miles, we began to discover dim rabbit trails running in the same direction in which we were traveling. Great numbers of rabbits came around us, and we killed all we wanted of them. This is the place always since known as the Rabbit Hole Springs.
This large, marshy pond was not what the immigrants saw. They saw only some rabbit holes, from which they had to scoop water by hand, and very little grass for livestock. We can only imagine the anxiety they felt knowing it was 35 miles back to the Humboldt River and some 23 miles to the next known water. Many wagons did turn back, which must have been unnerving to those who proceeded into the unknown ahead.
From the time we left Rabbit Springs until we reached this place, I do not think I have been out of sight of a dead carcass, and in many places the road is blocked up so that you are compelled to leave it or pass over their dead bodies. I shall never forget that night in March. The road was lined on both sides with carcasses of animals which had perished on the way. They were so thick that from the wells to Black Rock, by stepping from one body to another, one need never to have touched the ground. I soon got out my rifle and employed myself in shooting the given out and abandoned cattle we met. It was an act of mercy, as otherwise they would have had a lingering but inevitable death.
Most of the time, I'm clear focused all around. Most of the time, I can keep both feet on the ground. I can follow the path. I can read the signs. Stay right with it. When the road unwinds, I can handle whatever I stumble upon. I don't even notice he's gone most of the time. It's well understood most of the time. I wouldn't change it if I could. I can make it all match. I can hold my own. I can deal with the situation right down to the bone. And I can survive. I can endure.
For most, the Black Rock Springs were the end of the desert ordeal, and from now on they expected to find water and grass. Instead, they would encounter obstacles of mountains, steep ravines, and Indians.
Most of the time.
The Nobles Trail used to come here and get water, and then they would go 30 miles that way.
Down there?
Down there, just straight on down.
Well, I can't get.
No, they were just happy to have something to drink.
When it had,
if it tasted bad, they carried a lot of corn. They had cornmeal with them that they could stick the water in to try and hide the taste. And alum would take some of the taste out of it. Yeah, and they used alum. They carry a lot of that, and then worst come to worst, they just boiled the hell out of it and made coffee with it.
It's not something you think back on.
That is smart. Look, that's right there.
Are you going to weave some baskets for us? Are you going to weave some baskets for us?
Well, my wife is a basket weaver.
Well, that's what she is.
And I don't know if she's ever used this kind of stuff or not.
I know the Paiute did.
Pardon me?
The Paiute Indians did. And in order to preserve tradition up at their Indian reservation up here, they hand-wove great big giant baskets, went down to Pyramid Lake, got some lahontan and trout, and filled them with water, and foot raced them all the way back up to the Indian reservation up above Soldier Meadows there, and turned those trout loose. And there's lahontan and trout in the Indian reservation in their lake.
Still there, huh?
Yeah.
Ancestors, of course.
Yeah, ancestors, but the Indians actually hand carried them up.
The water in the springs was clear and deep, and hot enough to boil bacon. We boiled our coffee by setting the coffee pot in the water. In one lay a dead ox, apparently fell there yesterday. One hind leg in the basin of water, which had so well cooked it that naught but white bones and tendons were left of the limb, as high as the water had influence.
Okay, well, just stand it up over there on top of that.
Here are the wonderful original cowboy beans.
Cowboy beans. How far? How far?
And we have made it. Wash it, take it back to the top of the kettle. All right, Sissy, we're done with this. We'll take it back here.
Awake on my airplane, awake on my airplane. My skin is bare, my skin is bare. Awake on my airplane, awake on my airplane. My skin is bare, my skin is there.
All right, you have a good day.
There.
And
Ten 10,000 years ago, this was a vast lake, 500 feet deep. and presumably it would have been possible to travel by boat from Hawthorne, Nevada, all the way to the Idaho border. The silt here is some 9,000 feet deep.
Off to our right also at about 2 o'clock for me, 2 o'clock. The big jagged mountain that you see sticking up on the other side of the Black Rock Range, that is King Lear Peak in the Jackson Mountain Range.
Traveling east, we ascend several miles up to the opening of Clapper Canyon in the Black Rock Range. Here we are told the mysterious account of Peter Lassen's murder. The canyon is named for Clapper, a companion of Lassen who was also shot dead that morning in 1864. The murder of Lassen and Clapper is still unsolved today.
Let's talk about Lassen now. He was born October 31st, 1800 in Farnham, Denmark. He arrived in Boston in 1831. In 1839 he moved to Oregon with some trappers. He sailed down to Bodega Bay in 1840. He entered California July 16th of 1840. He reported into Sutter's Fort, and Sutter hired him, and he ended up working as a blacksmith in San Jose during the winter of 1840 and 1841. In 1842 to 1844, he became a lumberjack in Santa Cruz. He'd been around enough now by then that in 1844 Mexico granted him a 22,000-acre land grant on Deer Creek in what is now Tehama County. In 1848 he established the Lassen Trail, which was 2 years off this, where he swung everybody back down. He had a big trading post on his ranch, and of course these people were all out of supplies and needed to buy stuff, so he happened to have a convenient place. After the Nobles Trail opened also, and shortcutted all this, they completely bypassed Lassen. So he sold his ranch, and he moved over to Honey Lake in 1855. In April of 1859, Lassen, Clapper, and a fellow named Wyatt rode out to meet some other riders in an attempt to find this lost silver. And they were camped out right here in Clapper Canyon. The night before he was murdered, an Indian rode into camp here, and they were camped right here. And he asked for some musket balls and some powder. Clapper and Wyatt, they didn't like Indians, and Lassen was a friend to all the Indians, and the Indians knew Lassen too. Anyway, Lassen gave the Indian some musket balls and powder, and he thanked him, and he left. The Indian left. In the morning, when they woke up, a shot rang out, and this guy Wyatt, he was the heavyset guy, he jumped up and he was looking, and Clapper had a bullet hole in his head and had fallen dead. Lassen was over here and stood up by the rock here and looked up because the shots came from up there, and with that a second shot came from above and hit Lassen right in the head, and he fell here dead too. Wyatt was 60 years old and about 300 pounds, and he took off running. The shot scared the horses. They were in the process of sort of breaking camp, so the horses weren't tethered. And the horses took off running, and Wyatt took off running. A third shot rang out, and it came down through Wyatt's pants, and right between went through his leg. Didn't hit him, went right through his pant leg. And he was able to find overdrive. And he started running even further. For some miracle, his horse happened to turn around and come back, and he managed to grab his horse, and he rode all the way to Susanville, bareback. and told everybody, you know, what had happened out here. So they came back out, the sheriff and all that, found everything as described. They buried Clapper right there, and they took Lassen's body back, and Lassen's buried in Susanville. The military investigated, everybody was trying to investigate to figure out who killed Lassen, because there was enough people that didn't like him that went the other way and figured they lost out on Gold Strike. They ultimately tried to blame the Indians, but the military said absolutely not. All of their whiskey, all of their food, all of their provisions were still on the horses. And Chief Winnemucca was even brought in on that, and he says, no, he says, why would we kill the only guy that will trade with us? Anyway, in 1992, it had been a real wet year, and there was a lot of flooding going on. And someone who was out here didn't even know what this was, because that's only about 4 years old, or 5 years old, that plaque. And there was some bones sticking out of the bank over there. And they called the cops right away, so the sheriff had to come out here. The first thing they had to do is to try and decide what county it's in. And they ended up digging up this skeleton. And somebody remembered, you know, I said, I think that might be that guy Clapper. So they had to do some forensic tests and all that, and they determined it was in fact Clapper, the long forgotten guy. And so he was taken back after they identified his body. He's buried next to Lassen now in Susanville. With $800 you could buy a wagon, 4 oxen, and all the food you needed to do the trip from St. Louis out.
That's a lot of money back then.
That was a lot of money. Most of those people had to sell their ranch or their farm. Yeah. They sold everything they had to gather up enough to do that. So that meant there was no going back. You know, they had to be rough people. This is a perfect wagon trail swale. Remember, the wheels are going along. The men are rolling the wheels as they're going along too. Of course, we would be going that way. Jeeps in your vehicles, you know, they're driving along. They got a set of wheels here and a set of wheels here. It's high in the middle and grass grows on that. 2-track road. But a true wagon road will be, like they say, a gentle swale. The light dust from the wheels and the animals' feet kind of gently build up through the years. And now what's happening here, of course, is the water's undercutting this. And as someone says, before long, this will be looking, as we get further up here where more and more water is coming through, it looks more like a creek bed than a wagon trail bed. And everyone will think that's actually the wagon trail. But that's the, you know, the new Jeep road alongside it.
How wide were the wagon wheels?
From 48 to 52. Nobody made a wagon exactly the same.
Of course not.
Now, when we, a little later today, I'll show you up on the rocks. We'll stop where you'll see some perfectly straight edges that are 48 inches apart where the wheels cut on the solid rock.
We arrive at Soldier Meadows Ranch. Located on a grassy spot shaded by large cottonwood trees, Soldier Meadows was a military outpost during the Paiute Indian Wars of the 1860s. The years 1910 to 1911 marked the last Indian battle in Little High Rock Canyon. The local people found many butchered and dead cattle, and further search found the bodies of 4 local ranchers. A $15,000 reward was posted, and a massive manhunt began. State Police Captain Donnelly tracked a band of Indians for about 25 days. The trail went east out of the High Rock area, across to Soldier Meadows, through Paiute Canyon, around the Jackson Mountains, and on to Rabbit Creek. The Indians were buried in a mass grave by Rabbit Creek. Soldier Meadows is now a historic guest ranch, where a weary traveler can find pleasant camping and lodging. From Soldier Meadows Ranch, we ascend southwest for 12 miles to Fly Canyon, where the wagons had to be lowered into the canyon by a rope tied around a large rock seen here. The technique is called block and tackle.
At the entrance to the gorge, there's a small descent of 40 or 50 yards, so steep in part of the upper end that it would seem as if it would be difficult to prevent the hind wheels from turning a somersault over the fore ones. After getting down, it then smooth sailing down to the bottom of the ravine to the west. They have got the wagon down in safety, thanks to God. I must go.
Our guides lead us to immense potholes, the largest we have ever seen.
So what we have here is the largest pothole in the United States. And the water swirls around so much in here, if a Volkswagen went in here, it would be drowned to nothing. But it's so far undercut, we think it's about 100 foot across. Like that.
Wow.
I've never climbed down in there, I guess you could from over there. Well, if you had some ropes and stuff, you could.
I didn't bring my rescue repellent.
Do you want to take a picture from up there?
Yeah, throw it.
Looks like those wilderness boundaries are going to block off the end of this road, and we can't drive around the edge of the lake like we used to.
We find the remains of Depression-era squatter cabins around High Rock Lake. Someone sees a rat scurry under a piece of metal on the ground. Lifting the metal, we find a gopher snake coiled around the rat.
Well, get down there.
No,
I got you that club. I watched the rat actually go underneath the board.
Well, we saw, I saw the tail on the other side, but well, that's not a rat tail.
Yeah, the rat went up. We scared him on the board.
Yeah, that's exactly.
The upper part of this basin is thickly filled with tall, dry grass, rushes, willows, and weeds. A mile or so over the head of the basin brought us to the entrance of the Grand Canyon, the High Rock Canyon. Base of the perpendicular wall of the right side. At base is a singular cave. just where the road quirks right, then left in a sharp bend. The entrance is a low flat arch, 4 feet high in the center. The chamber's oval and vaulted ceiling of 12 feet high and 35 feet long and 18 feet broad. Much smoke inside, level floor, much covered with fragments from the ceiling. Names and dates scratched all over the outer wall around the mouth of the cave. I wrote the name of the company and the date of passing, signed it and pinned it up in the roof of the grotto.
On one blind hairpin turn, we have no view of the road. A spotter makes sure no one goes off the edge.
Yeah. But through the years, most of the wheels were right down through the middle where they wore that down. But you can see the good straight edges from the steel rim they had on their wheel.
A call for help is broadcast over our CB radio. One of the Jeeps goes partially off the road.
That's fine. It won't hurt to hook onto this one. You lose one, you ain't gonna lose the second one.
Lose me?
The situation is precarious enough that the driver must remain in his vehicle, as any movement could send him off the edge. A plan is discussed, and 3 vehicles' winches are needed to pull out the stranded Jeep.
Go ahead and bring it in a little bit on the front.
day's end, we arrive at Stevens Camp and are greeted with another great feast. Storm clouds come and go to be replaced by cool air and a sky full of the brightest stars one could ever imagine. Another great reason to travel in a group is being able to make repairs on the spot.
Go through? Yeah, give it a little tug. Hold on, Bob. It looks close right there. You got those two little washers. I'm going to put a washer on each side.
After we left Upper High Rock Canyon, we crossed over one or two hills and passed some water and grass, and then took a round hill and encamped in a valley a short distance after passing some large rocks on our left. Israel Hale, August 29, 1849. We leave the barren sands of the desert for a region of mountains and hills, where perhaps the means of sustaining life might be found, where our wagons might be dashed to atoms by falling from precipices. 1,000 vague and undefined difficulties were present to our imaginations, and yet all felt strong for the work, feeling that it was our last.
California dreaming is in sight, but that is another story altogether.